Hi, and welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Mueller. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Today on the show, part two, Yvette Neri is here. Yvette's going to walk us through, well, what it's like to be a grandparent with a grandchild in the trans movement, and she's got some great advice for grandparents and parents alike ahead. We'll be right back.
Join Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Mueller as he hosts Unmasking the Trans Movement's next webinar, where we connect you with the clinical professionals who provide understanding on the many topics that make up this disturbing ideology and answer any questions you may have. Protecting the most vulnerable, women and children. Unmasking the Trans Movement. For more info on guests, dates, times, and pricing, see us online at unmaskingthetransmovement.com.
Welcome back. Today on the show, John Mueller is here, as well as Dr. Ann Gillies and Yvette Neri. They've been discussing, well, lots of things in terms of the language that's being used and how grandparents can actually utilize some of that language and parents to communicate to not only their own kids, but their grandkids as well. It's an ideology and a cult movement that's really started to cause, well, a lot of shift in the dynamic within families, and this is one of the things that we try to break down here on the show on a regular basis, because we know that there's grandparents out there who are angry, grandparents out there who are frustrated, grandparents out there who are just sitting on the couch and crying sad. We're going to help you through this. We're going to help you get through it all with some really great professional help. These individuals come with a world of experience from trauma patients that they deal with to the trans movement itself. So please, John Mueller, welcome to the show again. Dr. Ann Gillies and Yvette Neri, thank you all for being here. Lots to discuss here on part two. John, take it away.
Brad, thank you. And we are dealing with a subject, what's a grandparent to do? And Yvette, thank you for sharing last time, really the heart of a grandparent. But I want to shift now because you've had some experiences, and this will be educational for everyone to help them understand we have to get involved. Ann has spoken on the program previously, she and Brad, on the dangers of the trans activists. These are guys, you've got both men and women, but the most dangerous ones are what I call the porn-fueled men that have become deviant. So no man thinks it's a reasonable thing in this day and age to dress in women's underwear and drag unless he's saturated himself in countless hours, years worth of pornography. Pornography does something to a man's mind, and it creates a malevolence toward women. Yvette, talk to us about the experiences you've recently had at Let Women Speak conferences. Kelly Jane Keane has been leading that. She got attacked over in New Zealand. This is becoming more serious because ultimately women are saying enough is enough, and they are protecting vulnerable women and children. And these deviant men are now showing who they are. Talk to us about your experience both in LA and then New York.
So last fall, Kelly J. Keane came from England to do a 10-stop tour in the United States over the course of about a month. And I was super excited. I've been watching her for years, and it was an opportunity for me to do something, to speak, on YouTube, to speak on the sidewalk, but it's streamed on YouTube, and see if I can help other grandparents, anyone else who feels alone and they're looking for someone having a similar experience. Because I have to be careful what I do in my own city, because it's sensitive within my own family, I felt much freer to go to LA. So I went to LA, and the event went very well. There were no protesters. And over the course of about an hour and a half, a bunch of women shared what's happening for us in relation to this transgender ideology and how it's affecting women and women's spaces and children and all of that. And then after I came home, I watched every event after that. And then I knew I had to go to the last one in New York City. So I bought a ticket and went to New York City, and we had the responses over the other cities had gotten more and more violent. And in New York, we started with a handful of policemen and maybe 10 hired security guards. And we were swamped by, they have estimated 200-300 members of Antifa and trans rights activists. And how do I know it's Antifa? Because I saw 4 Antifa flags. And I saw a man wearing an Antifa shirt, and he had been there early, like in an organizational way. New York City Antifa also took credit on Twitter. But it was so violent and loud. Kelly J. Keane couldn't even get to the event. The police would not escort her across the street. There were a couple of models. There was Anthony Martucci and Kazel. Oh, what's her last name? I'll think of it later. But they're well-known models in New York City, half naked. And there was another man there who had been taking estrogen, and they're waving their boobs around, yelling that they're going to beat our asses.
Yeah, people need to understand. I've seen, I wish we had clips of this.
This is on video. Yeah.
This potentially became a riot. You had these deviant men, some women interspersed in it, but primarily deviant men. The police, the New York City police, had barricades up, the metal railings, and these guys were pushing against it. It became a very dangerous situation.
Them in. Yeah. And we ended up having a whole lot more police officers come out. They had us end the event early. They escorted us to the parking structure so we wouldn't be attacked. That model, Anthony Martucci, saw Jim Ferret, who is a Stonewall veteran, and they hate him because he was at Stonewall. And he says that no, Marsha P. Johnson was not a woman, and she wasn't there. Well, Jim called him she. He wasn't there on the first day of Stonewall, because that's part of the new trans revisionist history, is that a trans woman started Stonewall. So this model was getting in Jim's face and calling him a faggot and a bitch, and he's 81 years old.
So this is one of the original gay rights activists, this man who's now in his 80s, and these deviant, porn-saturated men are calling the original person who's the gay rights activist, calling him slurs and threatening it, and then he got assaulted by these deviant guys.
He was spat on. They didn't hit him, but they did spit on him.
This is the whole implosion that we've been talking about for a long time, that I believe is coming to a head. Like the pendulum has gone way too far, and we're seeing the evidence of this kind of corruption throughout all of this. And it's just incredible how much hatred and deviance within the whole activist, LGBTQ plus activists camp there is. And yet you, as a grandma, and women, just ordinary women who dare to say, I need a safe place just to be, are the ones who are on the front lines getting assaulted as well, right? And those are the things that we need to be aware of. We need to help people understand. Yvette, what do you think? What is your perspective in moving forward with this?
Oh, gosh. I mean, when that happened, I knew I had to be more involved.
Good.
Because I will not be shouted down.
Good.
I will not be coward like that. So I have been looking locally for groups who are interested in protecting children from this garbage. And I found one, which is the local chapter of Moms for Liberty. And so I've been talking with them and doing some education. I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. I just have a lot more info than they do. I have I have a neighbor whose 11-year-old son came home saying he's non-binary. And so I've pulled the parents aside to say, this is what he's being taught.
Yes.
This is what, just so they know, this is the language. And this is why you don't want to go down this road. I would love to reach more parents, and I don't really know how, because you can't go through the schools.
No,
and
that's right.
You can't go through things like apps like Nextdoor and all of that, because that's hate speech. And so there was the Partners for Ethical Care, who are a wonderful group.
Matter of fact, Yvette, show us your shirt. We love it.
Oh,
there you go. Partners for Ethical Care. We had Alex Aaron on our program. Alex is connected with Partners for Ethical Care.
Yes. And it was, they had a panel discussion.
So you recently were involved in a conference in Texas.
Yes. Yeah, I was involved. I was in the audience. But it was very well done. We also had a panel of detransitioners who were telling us about their stories of thinking they were trans either as children or very young adults, having no pushback. They're just affirm. They have surgeries, hormonal treatments, and then realize their problem was trauma, not that they're the wrong sex. And they can recover some from the treatments, but not completely. Like women's voices don't come back up, breasts don't regrow.
I think this is where Brad, his frustration is very, very necessary, because we need to have the same fire under us, in the sense where here are these children are now adults who are coming back saying, why didn't someone just tell us? Mm-hmm. And the cost is high for telling them, but we've got to tell parents, whoever we can tell, and be able, hopefully, to be heard. Now, whether they will listen or not, but here's something that I think is hopeful, because I've been writing on their stuff for many, many years, and my daughter's husband just came over while I was away and talking to my husband and said, we've decided, they don't have children in the public school system, they're little children right now. We're not going to allow our children to go to sex ed class because of all this gender stuff. Now, I mean, that's very short-sighted. They don't understand, but that's okay. Right now, that's an open door for us to talk to them now before their children start school, because they're hearing from other parents that there's something going on in the schools. And that's, of course, I'm blacklisted in our area as being radical. But the issue is...
You're a radical, Anne. You're a radical.
The word is getting out. And I was so encouraged just to hear my son-in-law say, we're going to keep them out of sex ed. Now, we know the sex ed is the least of it. But as long as we can keep social the dialogue, as long as we can open the dialogue, and then we can say, look, and I mean, I've got all the literature, so it'll be pretty easy to say all the, look, this is what's really going on. And so the more people we can affect, the better. But sometimes it's only the one person here and there who tell a whole lot of other people, right?
And I talk. I talk to strangers. I talk to anyone who will be still long enough. And some people are like, oh no, but it's fine, and they're not doing that to children. And I say, oh yes, they are. And a lot of people are horrified. They have no idea. So just anyone I can educate.
I have an idea and I'm horrified.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And the more you learn, the more horrified we become, right? Because underneath the trans movement, I mean, hiding in the wings, and they're not very hidden anymore, are the whole issue of pedophilia. And when we talk about LGBTQ plus, we need to put the P in there. Let's be honest, folks.
Let's be honest what the P is. The plus, rather.
Because that is creeping in as we're all focused on trends, the trans movement. Then it gives these individuals a whole lot more leeway to kind of come under the radar and really get established. And that's really what's happening. There's a whole horrific agenda against children.
And I think it's really important to distinguish that the LGB have nothing to do with the TQIA+++. People lump us all together, and they think that lesbians and gays approve of all this trans business, and we don't.
Yeah,
well, okay, so the problem here is my daughter went to a party at New Year's Eve. It turned out to be a pink panty party with a bunch of girls sitting around wanting to kiss, play spin the bottle, and do all that. My daughter sat off to the side and did not participate. And somebody who calls herself Dan now instead of her real name decided to get up from that circle and come over and stand with my daughter and have a conversation. And she said to my daughter, you know, I don't know if I get all this anymore. This seems kind of really weird. And you sitting over here made me think really hard about, you know, whether I should be involved. And it's things like that that are going to get through to these kids. And it's the conversations that somebody who's aggressive like me as a dad and a grandparent is going to say, hey, you know what I'm saying, you're going to be able to take forward with you. Go be indifferent to that group when you're around them one time and watch them change. Watch them decide that this is kind of weird and that an outsider sitting there staring at us is even weirder. So then you're either not invited back to the group, which happened, but at the same time, I mean, that one girl who stood up and was kind of like the ringleader of all of these girls was not involved, and that made those other girls now question whether they should be sitting there anymore. Like, are they staring at us and making us do this? And it's sort of like, once you get that idea that people are putting these thoughts in your head and that they're saying that it's okay, and then you act out on it, and then you all of a sudden go, well, why? What's going on here? And then all that light bulb comes on. How do you get that light bulb to come on to an 80-year-old grandparent or a 75-year-old grandparent? How do you get the grandkids' light bulb to go on? Well, these are some of the things that we're talking about today. But I want to ask one question of you, Yvette, which is, how do you get a grandparent's light bulb to go on so that they're having that discussion with their own kid? Because their own kid, who's the parent of that grandchild, you need that discussion is the most important, I believe, out of all of this. It's not with the child. The child doesn't need to be dragged into it. That's why I continue to say it's our fight and not somebody else's fight.
Right. You know, the thing that I bring up when nothing else is reaching an adult is I ask them if they know what WPATH is, and that is the World Professional, is it physician or professional?
That's right.
Right. And it is the global Bible for trans healthcare. The most recent version, the Standards of Care 8, was published in September of 2022. And it has a brand new chapter in it, and it's called Eunuchs. And when you read through it, it not only says that kids can know if they're eunuch gender or not, it has a direct hyperlink. It is a live link to the eunuch archive. And if you click there, you can read some sample stories. And what it is sadism and pedophilia porn fiction. And, you know, you can read the sample stories. I read a few paragraphs and I'm like, oh, I can't read this. Genevieve Gluck already took one for the team and went in and read the actual stories. But yeah, so I asked them if this is all genuine and there's just this new kind of child that's being born, what is porn doing linked in the World Bible for transgender healthcare? Why is that there? Why are they saying children can know if they're eunuchs, that they want to be castrated chemically or physically? And no one, like, the conversation stops. It's like I haven't even spoken because they can't make sense of it. but it's very easy to find. You just Google WPATH SOC for Standards of Care 8 PDF and just read it. Click on the link.
That's incredible. And I think you've brought up a really, really important topic, because what we're talking again is annihilating children, annihilating humanity. What better way than you convince a child that they need to be castrated? Like, how horrific is this? I mean, there have been eunuchs since Bible days. This is not something new, but we never called it an identity. We never called it a gender. And we didn't we never encouraged children to pursue something like this. You have a really good point. I think that talking point alone could really perk up some parents' ears. What else in that whole issue do you see as really pivotal toward grandparents' understanding?
What else is pivotal? Perhaps it helps to understand that, like in the DSM, they have been slowly changing, gender identity dysphoria, which, gender identity disorder, that had been transsexualism, then it becomes gender identity disorder. And in like the DSM-4, they talk about the identity as the problem. That's the thing you need to work on. It's an identity disorder. But in DSM-5, it becomes gender dysphoria. And now the gender thing is not the problem. It's the feelings that are the problem. And that's what you treat.
Yeah. And you don't treat them, actually. You just affirm them.
Well, yes, you treat them by drugging them and cutting body parts off.
Which is, affirmation therapy right from the beginning to the end. Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that, for the vast majority of people, does nothing good.
No, in fact, the stats are out.
And for no children.
Right. And that these individuals actually have increased depression. It doesn't help their gender dysphoric feelings. They end up, their increased levels of self-harming. These were already evident before they decided to transition, but it all increases with affirmative care. And yet we keep pushing for more and more affirmation, for more medicalization. And that's where this cult is going to end up crashing. I really believe it.
Yeah, people don't know that girls as young as 13 in the United States get double mastectomies. They call it top surgery, but let's call it what it is, to affirm their gender. My friend's 15-year-old daughter wanted a double mastectomy to affirm her non-binary identity.
Wow.
To my knowledge, they didn't do it. But this is the insanity that's out there. People think it doesn't happen to children. It does. I've met them.
Well, and they're taught to hate their bodies. Sorry, John.
No, that's okay. And it speaks to, and this is really what parents and grandparents need to understand, that there are some very dark special interests that are behind this pushing those. People need to understand, Yvette, what you brought up. Genevieve Gluck has done a deep dive into, they can look that up on YouTube. They need to really understand the import of what you said, which is WPATH being the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. We've had Dr. Michelle Cortella on here, Dr. Andre von Moll, both of whom have said this is that group is a pathetic little group, special interest group, yet they've been afforded scientific validity and importance. Yet now, along with them, is this group of very deviant, pre-arrested sex offenders, in my estimation. If they want to debate that, they can come on this program. I'm happy to have that discussion, because who's a pre-arrested pedophile? Somebody who's not arrested and nobody suspects yet, but they're deeply steeped in porn. There's a group of very deviant individuals, and lots of them, that have created what's called the eunuch archives. What is that? It's men getting off on seeing boys having their testicles cut off.
Oh.
And mixed in with that are men who've written stories about snuff porn, because after you castrate these boys and sexually assault them, you execute them. That is what we're talking about with eunuch identity. It is feeding into, it's the perfect platform for pedophiles to normalize what's going to happen to kids. And people need to understand these individuals, these adults, are not going to stop. And that's why, if we think this trans movement is going away, it's not. You have special interests, you have big pharma, you have medical doctors, you have the whole medical industry. So you have, and then you have very deviant individuals and those pushing to have pedophilia destigmatized, normalized, and then legalized. They're doing an end run on age of consent by bodily autonomy. And then within that are very deviant individuals that want to get their direct hands-on access to the private parts and private spaces of women and children. This is very dangerous, and people and grandparents have to awaken. And Yvette, you've done a really powerful job in doing a deep dive. You got a hold of the actual volumes. And any grandparent can do it, right? You sent away for the DSMs historically, and you started to check, and you saw that progression.
Yeah, you can download the PDFs for free, and Control F is your friend. You can search any term that you want in thousands of pages. Yeah, and all the standards of care 6, 7, and 8 for WPATH are easy PDF downloads.
There you go. And this is exactly what you're talking about now. You've mentioned for the audience now your book, because it speaks to exactly what Yvette is talking about.
Which book? The one, Implosion, or the one I'm writing right now?
Yeah, well, certainly the Opening the Floodgates, but the Implosion. So you've just written a book. You're trying to warn people. You're doing the circuit right now. You're trying to alert grandparents.
Yeah, and actually at the Great Awakening conference that we just had, I sold a ton of books, and I've had lots of comments back already. And Implosion is just a short, like a 12 chapters book, and it's just on what's happening right now in the culture. And people are going, wow, I need to give this to my neighbor. I need to give this to my friend. Oh, my mother needs to read this. And so I'm getting a lot of good feedback from it because it's very easy to read. And my others were more research-based and a little heavier material. This is just kind of straight from my heart. I was irate. I'm kind of like that when I started writing that book. I was just like, enough is enough. Like, I just got to put it down and put it on paper. And that's kind of where I am right now. And I was talking then, so that's Implosion, when the pendulum goes too far. And then the one I'm currently writing right now is going to be the danger of affirming gender dysphoria in children and adolescents. I don't know if that's going to be the title, but that's going to be, and it'll be more on the medical aspects of it and what we're actually affirming, because people don't understand. You know, they think, oh, well, we just need to comply with what the government says, or we need to go along with this. And Yvette, it's just like what you're saying. They don't understand. And the more we can tell them what's going on, and we can put material in their hands because they're asking for it, we want to do that. So yeah, it's kind of a lot of stuff right now, but people are waking up, John. And I think this is everything we've been doing, plugging away for years. Finally, there are some open ears to hear. We just need a tsunami of them to open up, and then we have a wave to really push back.
Well, hopefully this will be a part of that. Yvette, your voice is a powerful one, your history, your own personal experience. You know, have the last word. What do you want to say to grandparents?
You're so important. Your grandchildren need you in whatever way, whichever style of supporting them, be that by confronting their parents or loving them as a person. You don't have to put up with the gender business, but love the child.
Brad, it's not our, as you always say, it's not our children's fight. This is our fight. And thank you for hosting all of us.
It truly is our fight. And there was a comment that was made that this will never go away. I would like to beg to differ that comment can be turned upside down and we can change this. We're going to take a lot of time, but I think we can get through this. We just need to make sure parents and grandparents do their due diligence. And that's exactly why we have this episode and these last couple of episodes to present to the public, is for that reason. Yvette, thank you so much for being here. I've learned a lot. I know that our viewers have learned a lot. I know that Dr. Ann and John are both compassionate about this whole subject, and they're not going to quit. They're not going away, and neither am I. And it's people like you that keep us going, Yvette, because of your stories, because of your knowledge, and because of your expertise in this now. And that's the key thing. You went from being a parent with your own kid to being a grandparent to now being an expert at the trans movement and what's going on, and how this mental health issue is something a little bit more even now than a mental health issue as we bring in the cult side of things. But it is curable. There is hope for the future, and there is hope for our kids. So it's because of people like you, Yvette. Thank you very much for being here today. This is Unmasking the Trans Movement. You can find us on BitChute, where all of our episodes are posted as well. You'll find us on YouTube too, and we're also going to be setting up our Rumble channel shortly. You can find us at our home too at unmaskingthetransmovement.com. Till next time, I'm Brad Wilder on behalf of Dr. Ann Gillies, John Euler, and Yvette Nair. Thank you very much to all of you for being here today. Till next time, we'll see you soon.